All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Rocky Top Insider Reaction Show. Ryan Shumpert, Rick Butler here at the Food City Center. First time this season, first of many. Boy, it has been an exhausting 36 hours or so. Josh Elander hired to the baseball team. Tennessee goes to Lexington, gets a win in the gridiron, and now we cap it off with a basketball game, an exhibition game. Tennessee loses that one by a score of 83-76 here in Knoxville. Ryan, this was the debut. Not necessarily season debut, but Food City Center debut, we could say, for a bunch of prominent names. I'd say two of the most, including Nate Ament and Jacoby Gillespie. We'll kind of start with them, but what were some of your overall thoughts of just how this whole thing unfolded tonight? I believe Tennessee went into the halftime break with about a 6-point lead. Obviously, ended up being outscored by about 13 in the second half to get to the 83-76 final.
Yeah, I'm impressed you got back to. I didn't think you knew the final score the way you were talking about it. And we don't
Look,
have the stat sheet. And
yeah.
Okay, I guess
it's a long way.
Is up there.
It is.
Up there. Okay.
I think I'm tired enough now from the whole weekend
that's fair.
that I'm just going, and it just happened to work out.
Well, I think you start with takeaways more about Tennessee than the game itself, I guess. The game itself, you would point to that early. Second half when Duke kind of took control, but what you said, I'll start with the stars. Jacoby Gillespie and Nate Ament were not very efficient offensively tonight. I think they combined to shoot 10 of 40 from the field. Gillespie did get to the line a good bit and finished with 17 points, and Nate Ament, 11 or something, maybe a little more than that, somewhere in that range. So, neither of them were great offensively, especially. But I think what you do have to like about them is they affected the game in other ways, even on a night where they didn't shoot the ball particularly well. Gillespie had, I want to say, 7 assists is what he ended with.
Maybe even 8.
Yeah, maybe it might have been 8. And Nate Ament got to 10 rebounds for a double-double. So did some good things. I would just say, just in general, caution not to read way too much into these exhibition games. They're oftentimes liars. And Gillespie, I'm certainly not worried about. And Nate Ament, I think you're going to see some learning curves and some growing pains at times. So I think that aspect of it, made some sense. I'm not saying this is just a complete one-off and he's going to be amazing from here on out. But I'm still certainly not panicked about how he played or anything like that.
Yeah, you mentioned it to us during the game up there on press row. I think he even wrote about it after the game. But you can go back to a Chaz Lanier, right? Not necessarily apples to oranges, but didn't have a great exhibition game against Indiana last year. Hey, that guy ended up being Tennessee's all-time single-season three-point record holder, right? So things can change, and I think that's one of the big takeaways that you get from this game, because you're right. Maybe there's not a whole need to overreact to this game, but I think you can see some of the building blocks of maybe what this team can be, but also specifically some of these players in general. Nate Ament, I think you did see some of the versatility that it brings to the table. I would imagine that he ends up hitting some of those shots as the season unfolds and as he gets more comfortable. But he, to me, and Rick Barnes said after the game as well, seems like a guy who can get to the free throw line. And I think that can be really advantageous for this Tennessee offense. Getting him to the free throw line, obviously with his length, he's going to draw a lot of contact when he goes to the rim. But Rick Barnes also said that he's learning how to be a perimeter player on the outside, whether that be working on the outside or obviously driving to the basket as well. So I think you can see some of those building blocks start to kind of come to fruition. And again, it's an exhibition game against a really good team, right? Tennessee's going to have some of those gimme games. And I know it is a tough non-conference slate, but some of those,
Tennessee's first 5 games are all bye games.
Yeah, so they're all workable games to kind of get that feeding under people, figure out rotations. I think that was certainly one of the storylines coming out of this, is just rotations and what Tennessee's going to do there. But again, you played Duke in the first exhibition game of the season. It's a good team right there, obviously with one in particular, a total superstar. So I think a lot to take away from this game without maybe necessarily too much to overreact to in the process.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the more interesting things was just the 2-guard minutes. We knew that was going to be a big question mark for this team, and Bishop Boswell gets to start. I think that was at least surprising on its own, and all the more so how many minutes he played. I want to say he finished around 24 minutes. If that is the case when Tennessee gets into SEC play, that would be, from where we were in the preseason and my expectations to that, would be stunning. I thought he did some nice things tonight, especially in the first half. Playing good defense, had some nice assists, but just the offense. I mean, he took 2 shots. He just doesn't bring a whole lot offensively. I thought he played the final 10-30 of the game. Tennessee made 3 field goals in the final 10-30. It's obviously not all on Bishop Boswell, but I do think that speaks to that not being a great offensive lineup. So that was really interesting. I was really surprised by that. Ethan Berg, I liked what he gave Tennessee. Amari Abram Rick Barnes talked about needed to bring a little bit more energy off the bench. I didn't think he was great, but you did see him make a 3 there in the first half. So kind of some first looks at that. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out over the course of the season. And I would say that was from rotations, from a minutes, from a production standpoint, that was probably my biggest surprise of the night.
You know who maybe does have that green light is Felix Okpara. He drilled that corner 3, I believe, in the first half of the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was one point in the first half, Tennessee had made 4 3-pointers, and J.P. Estrella and Felix Okpara
That's right.
accounted for 2 of them. Jacoby Gillespie, I don't even know. I think it was Abram and Berg that had the 2 others. So you had Jacoby Gillespie and Nate Ament hadn't made any of them. So
that's great.
I thought the front, especially in the first half, the front court was fantastic. That's a group I've talked about having some high expectations for and think can be really good. I think that's almost maybe one of the stories of the night. I think Jacoby and Nate combined for, let's say, 33 points on, I said earlier, 10 of 41 shooting, I think
Something
that's what
like
I
that.
said. 10 of 40 shooting. Tennessee's front court, 5 guys, Jalen Carey, Felix Okpara, Cade Phillips, J.P. Estrella, Dwayne Brown, combined for 34 points on 16 of 20 shooting. So Rick Barnes talked about that some, needing to get the ball inside of those guys more. They were way more efficient and a lot more productive in the first half. Second half, it didn't feel like they got a ton of shots, which I think goes to them needing to do more, and also to Tennessee's guards needing to put a better emphasis on getting the ball inside. So you saw the building blocks, the early stages of feeling like that group can be pretty darn good, I think.
Yeah, again, and going back to Okpara, I thought that he sort of followed up on what he was doing towards the end of last season there. He does seem like he's going to be a great presence for Tennessee down low, just getting a little bit more touch to his game around the rim. I think that's nothing but beneficial. But you mentioned the big name, I think the big storyline maybe even in some ways of the game was Dwayne Brown.
Yeah.
And a freshman center, freshman big, and the way that he came out, I believe he only checked in for the first time something like 6-7 minutes into the game, something like that. And boy, he immediately made an impact. I mean, 10 quick points, I believe, before halftime, something around that
10
mark.
10 quick points, 5 of 5 shooting, 4 rebounds, I think, in that stretch.
Plays physical, and if that's kind of the starting bar that he has for the season, he could be an exciting player to watch.
Yeah, he's been someone that I think has been impressive when we watched him in practice. Tennessee's coaches have really raved about him, spoke really, really highly of him. I think the question's just been, well, you got 4 guys that are a little more veteran, a little more proven in front of him. What does the role look like? And I think that's still a question, but he's certainly showed what he can give this team tonight. So he's a really interesting piece and was really impressive.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so Tennessee, now I do have to look up to the scoreboard. You jinxed me the first time, a 7-point loss here to Duke. Any other kind of final takeaways that you had about this game before we move on, and obviously move on to the home opener and season opener against Mercer over on the 3rd of November?
Yeah, I think rebounding Tennessee was not great at tonight. Rick Barnes talked about they needed to be more physical than they were just in general. I don't think that's anything that, I think the makeup of this team is a physical makeup, is a team that should be good rebounding. So that was something that maybe surprised me a little bit, or you'd point to this area as growth. And just Cameron Boozer was pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, tremendous. Maybe 24 points and 23 rebounds. Maybe those numbers are flip-flop, but it was
something like that. And
right
his
in that
passing
range.
was really good too. 6 assists. I mean, I think maybe the most impressive sequence he had tonight is he was on the left wing on the other end of the court in the second half, and had a ball screen, and Tennessee was already kind of rotating its defense to guard it, and he just whipped a skip pass into a corner for an open 3. The 3-pointer was missed, but he went and battled Dwayne Brown for the rebound.
Yeah.
And I don't think he got a rebound on it, but it was out of bounds on Dwayne Brown. So he was just a super impressive player. So it'll be fun to watch him from afar the rest of the season.
If that's a Duke team that's maybe in kind of full season swing at that point, that might have been a triple-double.
Yeah,
it was. I remember a couple at least that felt like he should have had more assists on the game as well. But he's going to be a phenomenal player. Again, all of this kind of wraps up to a really good showing for Tennessee to kind of get under their belt before the regular season starts. And as we mentioned a second ago, Tennessee's got a lot of games to kind of continue working on things. But to have sort of this benchmark here in the season, to have something that obviously don't need to mention, but a veteran like Rick Barnes can go and kind of dissect, tweak a little bit as he goes on. I think that's nothing but good for Tennessee, and should provide some good things moving down the road.
Yeah, I guess just my final point to drive home. These games are sometimes liars. Tennessee lost to Indiana by maybe a bigger margin than this game. Last year, Indiana missed the tournament. And my favorite, 2 years ago, Arkansas beat Purdue by like 15 points, and Arkansas was terrible, missed the tournament by a lot, and Purdue made it to the national championship game. So it's like I said, dive into maybe as much as everything that happened in the game and the flow of the game, but you individual observations and stuff like that are interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see how both these teams come out of this game.
Again, a crazy 36 hours here on Rocky Top. Josh Elander takes over as the Tennessee baseball head coach on Saturday afternoon. Tennessee goes to Kentucky, gets a big win against the Wildcats there in Lexington. And then, of course, this game happens on a Sunday night. By the way, if you're watching this on the RTI YouTube channel, stick around to it on Monday morning. We will be bringing you the Josh Elander press conference as he is officially introduced as the next head coach of the Tennessee baseball team. I believe the 26th one in program history. So that is going to wrap it up for us here from the Food City Center. For the first time, certainly not the last time, but it is officially crossover season on Rocky Top, and we will have you covered with everything that you need to know as the sports continue rolling forward. Hey, that is Ryan Shumpert. I'm Rick Butler. Tennessee loses to Duke in an exhibition game by a score of 83-76. We'll catch you back for the season opener on November 3rd against Mercer.